and welcome to all of you. It is great to be together in one of the world's greatest cities and my home, Vancouver, like many of you, discussing two of today's hottest topics, artificial intelligence and the climate emergency. And of course, we're here with three entertainment thought leaders, Liz, Kevin, and Kay. And I am so grateful to join you all on the unceded ancestral territories of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh nations, and in particular grateful for what we can learn when we convene with purpose. At FanTrust, we are celebrating our 25th anniversary at the intersection of innovation and entertainment, and that work increasingly involves things like ethical AI, sustainability, and of course, equity, diversity, and inclusion. My own background in climate physics launched a lifelong commitment to sustainability, and then much later in my career as CEO of Vancouver Economic Commission, I oversaw our film commission, and that's where I really learned that businesses can do well by doing good, and that sustainability and success are not at all mutually exclusive. In fact, they reinforce each other. And then, that focus on the environment can also lead to things like increased relationships, revenues, and reach. And then somewhat later, as CEO of Edmonton's Innovation Authority, I launched Canada's first ethical artificial intelligence accelerator fund. This is an institute that is in direct support of AI for social good. So let's get into our topic very briefly and then turn it over to our experts today. I really see AI as a double-edged sword, or perhaps even an AK-47. So it is ubiquitous, it is powerful, and it can be dangerous in the wrong hands. On the one hand, and we are talking about a paradox, it promises to help humanity solve the climate crisis, a crisis of our own making. And on the other hand, AI's energy consumption could just as easily push us past the brink. And the truth is, we don't even need intelligence, human or artificial, to address the climate emergency. It's like a dum-dum problem. We know exactly what to do, right? We get off carbon. We know what to do. We've known this since the 80s, which was a gentler time when we had a lot more time to do it, a time when all the facts known to women were in. We had all of that at our fingertips. It's not an intelligence problem. It's a problem of political will. So put simply, can artificial intelligence fix human idiocy? Or have we, with all of our intelligence, created a smart machine in our own image, essentially another energy monster? Machines, they're just like us, right? So will AI help us tackle ourselves and be the better person? What role can ethical AI and the entertainment industry play in saving the planet? We're about to find out. Please join me in welcoming our panelists, Liz, Kevin, and Kay. And I would like to start with Kay. I'm going to open it to you and then take a seat. Your organization has released an exciting new report today. I understand Kay has only had 2 hours of sleep. This is truly hot off the press. I'm so excited to read it. What are the highlights and how do they relate to us in the world of entertainment?
Thank you so much, Catherine. Hello, everybody. So yes, hot off the press, State of AI Ethics Report, Volume 7 by the Montreal AI Ethics Institute. 58 contributors from around the world, 17 chapters containing 48 essays around the sectoral applications of AI, everything from military to healthcare to entertainment. And of course, policy. The biggest thing that we found for the paper, putting it together, the themes across the board, really is that there's a widening power gap in terms of policymaking, particularly with regards to the people who are creating AI and building policies around AI, and then the people who are most impacted by AI on the ground. In terms of arts and entertainment, there's a fantastic article in the paper that references media and culture workers as canaries in the coal mine. And this is largely true. Like, I think when we're talking about AI in the context of entertainment, there's a lot of chatter about essentially replacing human creativity, replacing human labor, in order to cut costs. Personally, I think, we should consider whether or not, first and foremost, AI intervention is applicable on all levels of the film production process. And secondly, the ethics around what it means to replace human creativity with AI. Our stance at the Montreal AI Ethics Institute is that we should really start looking at AI as an assistive tool rather than as a replacement for human labor and creativity. So I'll leave it at that because I feel like that's a good jumping off point for the rest of my panelists here, but I hope you read the report and you download it today. It's free.
Thank you so much, and for your work on the report. It sounds so valuable at a critical time. Liz, I'm going to go to you next. You are a career filmmaker. You're actually revisiting a very interesting topic and sort of taking it up a notch with a focus on AI, water consumption, data centers. We would love to hear kind of what brought you to this point and what you're learning right now.
AI is considered the next frontier. And the question that I'm asking, is it draining this world for another? I think it's an intersection. When we look at AI data expansion and the issue of water use, here in Canada, the cool northern wellspring of opportunity for big business, I think that it's an intersection to explore many ethical questions right now that we can't disentangle from militarism and from entertainment, of course. But I think that the intersection that we're exploring is an ethical dilemma, and it's really, we want to look at it in the hands of community, because when we look globally, AI data expansion, there is a strong community grassroots response in drought-stricken areas of America, Mexico, India, and other countries. But here in Canada, it's only just beginning. So we want to be at ground zero to explore this now. So we're in early development and research. And so there's a lot that we don't know yet. But by being there on the ground now, we can explore, for example, in Ontario today, there's a protest, there's a vote happening about, Microsoft is guzzling and has access to drinkable, potable water. And these are big issues that are happening rapidly, daily. If you have your finger on the pulse of some of these environmental issues, the water footprint, energy footprint is just one aspect of it. But when we look at the question of sustainability, something I'd like to pose is that we cannot separate planetary health from human health. And we want to explore this intersection because, we're dealing with unprecedented times. There's big mental health issues, especially for young people who are consumers of big tech. And we want to unpack that, but we also want to unpack the water and energy footprint. So I think that this is all sounding very meta, but to bring it down to earth and talk about it at sort of a documentary filmmaking level, what we're doing is, for example, the Great Lakes is considered the epicenter of AI data center growth. And so, you know, there is going to be community resistance happening there, and we want to be there on the ground to bear witness and in an observational documentary style, be there over time to be able to see how that unfolds, because it's happening very quickly.
Thank goodness for community activists and for your work. It's really important that you're investigating these stories while they're unfolding. And what we've just learned is these are very thirsty machines at a time when many people in the world are parched. And so we're not only working hand in glove with AI, but it could become our rival for resources. Now I would like to ask you, Kevin, to tell us a bit about how your stealth film production work in artificial intelligence is perhaps rivaling what's going on in Hollywood, and how you're using AI to do that, and how you're using it in sustainable ways.
Certainly. Thank you for having me here and these perspectives. And I cannot wait to read your paper, Kay. I'm just going to devour the heck out of that.
Yes.
And I'm sure every one of us are going to as well. It's such a crucial time, not only in the labor and the ethical, but also, of course, the resource intensity moments that we're facing in AI filmmaking in particular. This is an industry that has really exploded out of thin air. We're a few months into large initiatives like really coming around and surfacing, creating content, organizing as companies in a paradigm that is literally shifting several times a day with new technologies, new models, and therefore new resource capacity that requires, you know, real hardware, real resources in the field. And those of us that are on the front lines, and we're seeing all this going on, we're starting to take stock and say, yes, community-led initiatives are hyper important, as well as taking resources onto our own accord. And yes, today we are using Microsoft, Google, AWS, and they're all touting figures in terms of water positivity, which usually means extracting from one place and giving back and creating resources in another region. The two don't seem to be meeting right now, and that's a problem. So it becomes incumbent for those of us that, you know, really give a hoot about humans on the front line, which I hope is all storytellers, but I can't talk for everyone, to look at local compute, for example. And that can be on the community level, and that can be on the on-site, on-premises level as well, edge computing as well, which takes the resources away from sort of the large-scale factors of going to big cloud, and, you know, leveraging the mass sum of a community's phones that have compute to spare, for example, and already have energy in them, doing their thing every day, and taking like 3% of their compute resources to help bring a story to life, for example. Indigenous co-led, and ideally for me anyways, Indigenous entirely led community compute clusters, like what we've seen in a region in Alaska whose name escapes me right now, but they've had a data center running for a long time that's community oriented. Over at the BC AI ecosphere, which I'm also a part of, and Chris is out there as well, as a part of that endeavor as well. We had Peter Lucas Jones just under a year ago on as a speaker, and he presented a living, breathing ecosystem of indigenous data and power sovereignty in New Zealand, which was really, really powerful to take in. Like they train their own models. We have local examples of that here as well. Simon Fraser University has an amazing initiative in completely training their own models for creative usage. It's called AutoLoom, if I'm not mistaken. There are a lot of things starting to happen, and it's really up to every single one of us individually and in community and as a greater collective to stand at the front lines and say, okay, we started off on a bad foot here, everybody, in a lot of ways, but there are a lot of ways to indeed co-create not only just storytelling opportunities, but environmental and sustainability opportunities that are inclusive of community that could create more potential that we've ever seen before. And yes, that's Pollyanna, but I'm gonna plant that in the ground because I want that to happen.
Well, because it's not going anywhere, is it?
It's definitely the genie's out of the bottle.
Mhm.
So quick show of hands. How many of you in the audience think about the carbon cost when you query ChatGPT?
That's pretty good.
That's okay.
Yep.
Okay. I believe it's something like 0.1 gram per prompt. Now, there's a lot of us with a conscience in this room, but the question for me is, what is the corporate responsibility, the AI carbon costs of training these models, and the role that corporations can and must play in greening, I'll call it the AI grid. Kay, what does your report have to say about corporate responsibility?
I mean, it's varied. There's like 58 contributors, as I mentioned earlier. But I think across the board, my take on it is this. Some companies are very much invested in doing good. Others are not. But on a whole, right now, it's a bit of a black box. You know, like we don't really have, for example, access to real numbers when it comes to how much electricity or water is being consumed when we're using AI. There's ballpark numbers, like for example, you know, last year in the US, data centers, on the topic of data centers, I think something in the ballpark of like 200 terawatts of electricity was used by data centers. That's equivalent to the power usage of Thailand for, you know, an entire year. And so, you know, and it's worth noting that right now, this is like the smallest footprint we will ever have when it comes to, you know, the usage of AI, because we haven't really scaled it yet to the degree that it can be scaled. And so I think, you know, sadly, corporations are set up to make profit. So they care when it's profitable. I think that's the bottom line. And it's something to really keep in mind when we're dealing with, you know, relying on corporate decisions to somehow guide policy making. And this is, I think, why community involvement and community co-creation is so important. As I mentioned earlier, there's a widening gap in terms of power. And with regards to community involvement, I think that, you know, the world of AI right now is very much lacking in intersectionality. There's not enough voices, not enough diverse voices in the room when it comes to policymaking around AI, adoption of AI, just even clarity around if you want to adopt AI, which is a lot of companies are talking about, how do we adopt AI, including in film? People aren't even clear about what the objectives are. Is it fit for purpose? Are we even asking those questions?
I so agree with that, and intersectionality can also and must also run across silos within a company. So I'll just use Netflix as an example. The carbon footprint for streaming for Netflix, just the streaming side of their business, is the size of Vancouver. So globally, streaming has that kind of carbon load. But now with artificial intelligence, you have things like AI dubbing, AI optimization, AI personalization. All of those ratchet up the carbon stakes. Maybe right now they're only like 50,000 tons, but they're growing fast. And like you say, you know, we're at the very early stages. It's like you're never going to look better in a bikini than you do today. So I wonder, you know, when I hear about this, what each of you has to say about how you're working to kind of harmonize across the silos in your own organization when it comes to AI usage and sustainability. And I'll start with you, please, Liz.
Okay, great. So I'd like to frame that by talking about Canada's water for a moment. So from a water justice ethos, which is really about the right to water movement, which is my first feature-length documentary from 2010 called Water on the Table, following the work and legacy work of Maud Barlow at the United Nations. Canada has sort of a myth of abundance. Well, it's true that we are blessed, like deeply blessed and extremely privileged when it comes to fresh water. We have, you know, roughly 20% of the world's fresh water. 7% of that is renewable. We do have drought in various parts of this vast country. And it's extremely important to underscore this reality with the fact that there are multiple, many Indigenous nations across Turtle Island without access to clean potable water. So within that context, when we look at the reality of what is happening, which is an unregulated industry sector that is looking to Canada as a cool northern wellspring of business opportunity, and all those business deals are being negotiated daily, and AI data center expansion is happening. It's here, it's happening, right? So what can we do? And I do think that coming back to, you know, documentary filmmaking, grassroots and community, there is work to be done, and I do believe that there will be a movement that is born very soon. It's happening now already, but I do believe that this will begin to grow and build momentum and build coalition and be Indigenous-led and have meaning and purpose in terms of making demands and rising up. And this is happening around the world. And like I said previously, I really do think that because there's so much we don't know, and it's pervasive, and we're all complicit. We're all using AI, whether we know it or not, as tech users. And so, coming back to your question, I think, you know, I'm not a Luddite, I'm a nerd, I love tech. For me, and with my company, and certainly when we're fully financed and we're in the throes of production and then post-production and then distribution, all the phases of what it takes to create a film and then get that film out into the world and disseminate. We will, of course, be using all kinds of technical tools, and we celebrate that, right? We love tech. However, it's so important to be aware, skeptical, and cautious. Those are kind of, that's how I'd like to frame it right now in terms of an approach. Because there are deeper, greater ethical questions as well. you know, we're focusing on sustainability as far as the environment goes, and that's a very big and important topic. But like I said earlier, sustainability cannot be unhitched from human health. And AI is the tool for new forms and all next-gen forms of militarization. That's a fact. So we know that big tech is invested in military, and we know there's a genocide going on in the world right now, and we know there's war, there's all kinds of data surveillance happening, and Palantir, for example, is used to aid and facilitate the work that ICE is doing in the US. So I could go on and on about that aspect, but I don't think we can disentangle those realities from the issue of environmental sustainability. They go hand in hand.
Sounds like there's another film there for you. And you've got the trifecta now of the military, industrial, and AI complex. And I think we could also add in there the wealth disparity and the billionaires that are behind the AI that we use complicitly, as you say. It's built into the machine. Thank you for that, Liz. And you, Kevin, tell us a bit about, in kind of concrete terms, what you can disclose about your stealth venture and the areas of entertainment that you're focused on, and ideally focused on sustainably.
Mm-hmm. I would love to piggyback off of the sustainability problem first. The water issue, which, and I don't minimize the word issue at all. The water crisis that AI creates, the reason for that is cooling. Compute needs massive amounts of cooling all the time. They will literally fry themselves into non-existence if cooling does not happen. You can fry an egg on an NVIDIA GPU and it will turn into atoms, basically. It gets that hot. So cooling is the problem. Heat. What do we do with all of that heat that these massive compute clusters create? Well, we already have a couple of examples where that could turn around, and it's incumbent on all of us to enforce these. Number one, there's quite a few initiatives in the UK and Scandinavia where heat is redistributed to apartment buildings in nearby clusters. I've seen some figures where there are 10,000 homes being heated by residual heat from compute. It's quite a novel idea. It's probably an infrastructure, massive component to take a look at. I think it's really got some bones, especially in, let's face it, cold climates like ours, right? The second component is novel uses of cooling. So taking what the excess is through the home heating component and institutional heating component, but also using new ways of server soaking, which is literally using mineral or synthetic oils, dielectric components to dip servers in, and there's no condensation. The heat gets dissipated within those materials. That is reduced significantly. And that's an emerging form as well, and I can't speak to the potential hazards of those oils, especially on the synthetic side, but it's something to look at. And we have some really novel ways of taking a look at the cooling problem and start to apply brilliance. Maybe even have the Ouroboros of AI chasing its own tail and come up with a solution for these, right? With all the data that we already have scientifically and institutionally. And on a personal and community and corporate level, I want to introduce into this conversation, we've all, a bunch of us have raised our hands, and let's face it, we're in a closed loop audience of attention on all this, right? When we raised our hands and said, we think about, the carbon cost of every ChatGPT or Claude or whatever large language model system that we're accessing. There's a tool that is within our BC AI ecosphere that has been vetted and tested at venues like MUTEC by Lionel Riggenbach. It's called WATTS, and that's WATTS app. And it's a VS Code component that sits in your browser or I believe even standalone. And from what I understand, piggybacks into like all of your API calls to these large language models and gives you the literal watts that you are consuming based on, yes, averages of information that we have available, but it takes the summation of that and gives you personal accountability of what you are individually doing to these terawatt hours that are coming out of thin air, but not, oh my goodness, right? And that informs us of, okay, so we've got these components that we've got numbers attached to them, vague, but there's ballpark averages that we can, okay, how can we divert that through hydro usage? How can we divert that through local compute clusters at key areas with solar integration or geothermal, right? It's such an amazing opportunity when we have our own personal accountability data set to tell us how to move forward.
Thank you for that. And let's check out that tool, everyone.
Yeah.
It sounds really timely.
Chris is probably firing up that link right now, so hit him up for it.
Amazing. Kay, you've been really focused on ethical AI through the Institute, through your own work. And there are ethical issues at every stage of film and television production, from pre-production through production, post, distribution, sales, etc. So what areas do you see the most kind of room for improvement? And what are the ethical considerations at each stage?
Okay. I think for me, it comes back down to the way we value human labor, the performers, the creatives. This is kind of like the, ground zero, I feel, especially when it comes to ethics in film and TV production. For example, one of the contributors to our paper, Amanda Silvera, she wrote about her experience. She's a voice actor. I don't know if you're familiar with this YouTube channel. It's called Psych2Go. It has 12.9 million subscribers on YouTube. She is the voice behind this massively successful channel. And her voice was stolen. No consent, no control, no compensation, as ACTRA would say, who also contributed an article in our publication. So again, largely in terms of like arts and entertainment, a lot of it is about AI replacing humans. We have Tilly Norwood, for example. Like I'm sure most of the folks in the room are familiar with Tilly Norwood, the AI actor. The question for me is, why are we bent on replacing ourselves? That's really the big question, I think, when it comes to production and labor. I can get behind the idea of task-specific AI use. So we're building this AI, and it's like, let's say it's really great for crunching scientific models or, raw data that would be, just would take forever to like go through. But when it comes to general artificial intelligence, like the idea that it's like, okay, we're building a machine that could effectively be as intelligent as we are, it becomes a little problematic, and that's an understatement. I feel like we've seen this movie, we know how it ends. Really, at the end of the day, we're at a crossroads, and how we proceed from here will determine whether we're doomed or redeemed.
Very good. Okay, so I want to challenge us to look at the conundrum from a different perspective, which is a lot of the creative AI software tools, I'm thinking like Sora, Runway, Dolly, they are not created by many of us in this room. They're created by tech bros, right? They don't have a history of storytelling or of filmmaking or of creativity. They come from data and coding. So why is it that we've also ceded our creative control and are letting others define our own destiny? And I will ask you, Liz.
It's unregulated capitalism on steroids. It's about,
Perfect. Mic drop. Mic drop.
that's what it is, right? Like, what are these freedom cities in America? I mean, everything, you know, and I've been listening to Peter Thiel and, you know, his ideology on human expansion and that the era of stagnation is over. And the Antichrist is Greta Thunberg. So, I mean, he's, I think, the 27th or 127th wealthiest billionaire on the planet. So we've got the billionaire class now. Do they have, what are their ethics? I mean, so they believe fully in an unregulated, deregulated sector to test our human, God-given, it's God's will, apparently, that goes with it. I don't, so somehow religion is part of this? I mean, is that a question? So, yeah, I mean, it's very dystopian. I mean, there's a rich, profound, and prophetic subplot here, which is that speculative fiction has been ahead of itself for a very long time, speaking to, you know, utopian and dystopian speculative realities. We can actually learn from some of those things, right? And are we, again, coming back to the question at the core of my new documentary, which is AI draining this world for another? The speculative fiction is something that we're integrating as well.
You know, just to play devil's advocate, there are a lot of corporate interests here that are baffling to me. So why is it that Google, Microsoft, and others are kind of owning the street when it comes to the creative tools that we're using, and not Paramount, Disney, and Netflix? Like, even at a corporate level, and I loved your mic drop, but these large corporations have kind of ceded to other non-creative interests and talents and what have you. So Kevin, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that in particular speaks to how quickly this has been thrust into our horizon. And with any, I'll say, without any regard to the ramifications of that, even the lawyers are scrambling. I've had conversations with some of those, and you know, the lawyers are playing catch up on that. Absolutely. On the basis of giving up our creativity to AI, I would like to introduce another slant, and I think this is really gaining momentum within those of us that are indeed on the bleeding edge and are not talking quite enough about it yet. We're just kind of seeing the output, and it's being drowned by the AI slop that we see really infiltrating our feeds all the time. Those of us that are really coming from an experience background in filmmaking, in visual storytelling, in audio storytelling, are really working with these tools, we're really experiencing not a loss of creative control, but actually an expansion of creative efficacy. It's not the models taking over all of your humanistic decision points at every turn. It's our co-pilot. And we literally live in the edit now, turn by turn. The edit tells us what the story is going to do, and then we get to go back to the virtual film set, that I call it, and get pickup shots that we require, whether in the corporate data sets or within our own, purpose-built, self-trained models. And that's another slant that I want to introduce as well. The movement for ethically trained models is growing by the minute, because let's face it, from a corporate standpoint, it's IP proof, it's lawsuit proof, right? When you have validation of data point entry versus output from end to end, you're secure, which does help with consent, which hopefully, and there are some early indications that this is starting to crest as well, that turns into remuneration on a latent space with blockchain level interdependency, that hopefully we have something substantially better than Spotify payouts, where data points of an artist's input into a model that they've completely given consent for turns into blockchain remuneration, for example, which turns into hard currency payout.
It doesn't even have to be blockchain. So just to get into this in more detail, and one of the leaders in remunerating rights holders is actually based right here in Vancouver, a company called Ray. I've been working with them for close to 20 years, but recently we've co-created an ethical AI marketplace where rights holders get real world dollars compensation
So important.
for their large libraries of content that previously had been scraped and stolen to train AI models. So again, like something that showcases our leadership, and sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to move beyond the blockchain to something that we can all count on in our pockets.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. And one more company that I'd love to highlight that is also Canadian is Moon Valley. They're based out of Toronto. They are a completely 100% verifiable, ethically trained, commercial grade model. And I think that's something we need to celebrate more. And there's some really stellar and amazing outputs, because not only is it ethically trained, it's one of the most tuned models to give creative control of camera, actor, set. You have the startings of, anyways, of granular control inside of that. So creative intent and ethical model right here in Canada. Hollywood's really starting to pick up on it. There's a ton of Hollywood investment starting to go into it from the major players as well. Let's give them a rise.
Okay, so shop on the home front for your AI solutions, data centers, and then actually monitor the water consumption of those
Absolutely.
things. Now I'm getting a cue from Melanie that it is time for you. It's time for all of you to raise your hands, to raise up, to challenge us and ask questions, and we'll start there. Yes. Oh.
Went past the camera. This one moment. There you go, and then I'll go over to you, my friend.
Prior to COVID, I was in conversations about virtual production and a data center. One of the things that was really interesting that the people that I was talking to were talking about heating homes, but they were also talking about collecting the condensation, making potable water, and creating water that could actually come back and be reused. I didn't actually hear anybody say that, so I'm just curious, did that just fail, or?
That's on my mind. I want the Dune prophecy of the still suit to happen on a large data center level. Absolutely. I think that's achievable, and we need more work on that.
Because I think that they actually made a waterfall, and they actually had the ability to create potable water. So they'd
That's
already done
amazing.
that prior to COVID. So, and I can't remember the company name, so I'm sorry, because we had to kind of go backwards, so I haven't talked to them in a while. Sorry.
But this is it. We have community solutions starting to come out from our shared knowledge base, right? And
Yeah.
we have a potential here.
Yeah, I think we need to lean into the utopian story and harness, all of these things from the grassroots up. because it does seem that it's here to stay and it's rapidly transforming everything. And so what can we do to push and demand sustainability and advanced forms of its use?
Hi. So this question is for Liz, Kevin, and Kay. You've each sort of touched on this topic of incentives for corporations and how they use these AI tools. So understanding that profit-driven companies will use any tool available to maximize that metric, which is normal in a capitalist economy. For each of you, what do you think would be a good way to incentivize healthier use of AI tools as an augment to human creativity instead of as a replacement, which is the fear-mongering, a very valid fear-mongering? Okay.
I mean, is it fear-mongering if it's already happening? I think that's the first question to ask. Is fear-mongering if it's not real, if it's not happening? But there's a lot of people who've been affected by scraping, and it's here, it's in front of us. And I think when it comes to corporate incentivization, that's what's being carved out now. For example, Minister Evan Solomon, right? Like he's asked Canada for input about AI policy. And I don't know what that might look like, because at this stage in the game, again, this like widening power gap is happening. Canada's in a very interesting spot geopolitically. You know, in the US, China, they're not really caring a whole lot about controlling AI, particularly like, you know, the idea is like unfettered innovation, right? Europe, the way they're approaching AI is very much around policies. Denmark has a really great one about giving their citizens copyright over their own image and likeness.
Bunch of commies.
Yeah, yeah. And so, you know.
They've also really held Meta's feet to the fire,
Yeah.
right? Because of the scale of that market
Correct.
and that policy, which
That's
I think
right.
is amazing.
Yeah. And so, you know, like, so I think in Canada, there's a lot of talk about, well, how do we ride that in-between space where, you know, we're looking at safety and innovation at the same time? How do we build safety, transparency, accountability by design as we move forward into this AI world?
I think that needs an incredible amount of intentionality.
Absolutely.
And I think policy is one facet of it. And we have to be so granular and careful about policy to ride that middle ground, which is going to be really hard to distill in all of this. And I'm going to drop, at first, probably a contentious notion at first, but hear me out on this. The BC policy of taking away the opportunity for blockchain and AI data centers here is right in principle, but the enormity of it robs us and neuters us of the opportunity to lead by example. We can co-create with Indigenous communities. We can co-create thoughtfully. We can take all of these things that we've talked about and be a world-class example and take advantage of this geopolitical situation, of our resources, of our community interests, of all of our intersectional sort of uniqueness that we have here, and turn that into a viable world stakeable opportunity. And it's really careful policy and engagement and a lot of trial and error that's going to make that happen.
And Jeffrey Hinton, the godfather, who is from Toronto and University of Toronto, he says that if we do not encode empathy into this
Amen.
AI system that is rapidly accelerating and unregulated, then we're doomed. So you have Elon Musk, who says that empathy is the downfall and weakness of humanity, of the human race. How do we counter these dichotomies?
Which is kind of ironic, especially when you're talking about entertainment and film and TV, because storytelling is an empathy machine. That's what it is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And all of you are right place, right time to be doing this work as leaders and as part of, positioning Vancouver, as you say, kind of owning our strengths, which include empathy. Chris,
Oh,
did you have a
yes.
question?
This has been a really solid, valuable panel. I just want to thank everyone for kind of holding these two opposing things simultaneously, our concerns and our desire to hold it to account and be responsible, and also our understanding of our adaptation requirements to kind of like wrap our heads around this and reinvent a lot of what we're doing for business. So just really great job at a time where so many AI panels are skimming across the surface. You guys went deep. Kay, I read your ethics report this morning in the bathtub, and there was something in there that really stuck out. Evan Solomon is courting public opinion for this 1 month while the lobbyists for all these big megacorps get access to him all year long through money and stuff like that. And so it'll be interesting to see how the people's opinion weighs against kind of the lobbying that's done there and stuff. And Kevin, I love your alternative vision for like BC's strengths and how we can be a part of the future in the economy and do it on our own terms. And I think that the world is hungry for that. I think other people want green powered data centers that are owned by indigenous nations and are put in places where the efficiency is high and stuff. And so I think just keep beating that drum. And Liz, I'm not familiar with your work, but you really just blown me away today, the way that you're out there kind of resisting and frontlining, and then also kind of envisioning these utopian futures and stuff. And so I wanted you to hit me with your 3-point plan one more time, the cautious, aware, and skeptical, or something like that. And then Catherine, if you'll let me, I just wanted to shout out Vivo Media Arts as well after, and they're building a GPU cluster here in Vancouver for the community. But Liz, what was that 3-point plan again there?
Aware, cautious, skeptical. I don't know if I said it in that order, but I think that it's time that we all look at new ways to engage with technology. AI is pervasive. It is infiltrating and everywhere. It just seems to be everywhere. My mom cannot tell an AI image from a real image. I have a trained eye. I can spot it right away. But who's to say that my trained eye, when am I going to be tricked? And I'm a filmmaker. So we need to keep our eye on this. We need to be deeply aware. We need to engage in a way that's cautious, but also very skeptical.
I'm going to add that to my personal kind of value list in AI policy, and I'm going to add curious to it as well. So I'll be
curious. Yeah. Thank you for those are the pillars. Yeah.
So may I shout out Vivo real quick? So I run this nonprofit industry association for AI people here, and we've got a consortium inside our network led by Vivo Media Arts, which is a 30-year nonprofit in the film and media space here in Vancouver. They've applied for $5 million for a GPU cluster here for the community to use on their archives, to give other filmmakers and artists access to and stuff. And it's a long road ahead, but we just had a meeting with Pacifican last week, and they said there's alignment between that project and their AI mandate. So we'll see. But Vivo, support them. They're doing great work in this space.
Thank you.
Yeah, brother.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you for all you're doing with the AI community here in Vancouver. Chris Krug, if you don't know his AI meetups, they are the place to be at the planetarium every single month. Love them. All right, Melanie, I know it's time for us to wrap. This has been a really special afternoon session for me. I really appreciate it, and I hope you all feel the same. Connect with us anytime. We'd love to explore and stay curious together.
You're a stellar moderator.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This was such a
much.
treat. Thank you.